So, welcome back, everyone, for the Fireside chat on the spot with Shiv. The conversation is going to bring focus on climate smart agriculture, building resilience against climate change. I warmly welcome Mr. Shiv Kumar, Group Head Agri and IT Businesses at ITC Limited, to take his place on the stage. I would now like to invite on stage our guest, Mr. PVS Suryakumar, Deputy Managing Director at National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. I now hand over to Mr. Shiv Kumar to take the session forward.
Well, good afternoon to all of you, and welcome back. And it's great to come back to a physical event after a 2-year break. We continued with this session on the spot with Shiv during the virtual events also, but nothing like being in the middle of people and having conversations outside of the session and before and after. So glad to be here, and warm welcome to Mr. Surya Kumar, a very apt person for the theme that we have picked up for the current year. In fact, when we saw the concluding slide that Dr. Fansalkar spoke about this morning out of the soil report of the big challenge of the floods and the districts prone to floods.
Yes.
And that only got further aggravated with climate change. And that's just one part of the climate change that we are facing. In fact, a few decades ago, when things like global warming and climate change came into popular lexicon, I mean, it was always there for many years in the field of science and in the professions associated with these areas. But when it became a little more in the popular lingo, it was as if it is some years away. And things like 2020 itself was looking far away. Forget about 2030, 2050, for which many of the other projections are done. Now we already talk about 2070 or 2099 and so on. And as the years progressed, all that we witnessed is that the extreme weather events became even more intense. They became even more frequent and even more widespread. And what was a future tense has become very tense current. Just on the eve of COP27, CSE had produced a data sheet on what India went through in the first 9 months of 2022. This was produced in October, so it talked about the first 9 months. So out of the 273 days, there was an extreme weather event in one or the other part of India for 242 of those days. So there's a whopping 89% of the number of days that we had some weather event. And the report also said 70% of all districts are hotspots for these weather events. That's as widespread as it is. It's not, flood and flood prone 50 districts, it's one thing, but 70% of all districts is another thing in terms of climate change as a challenge. And 40% of all districts have seen swapping, as in drought-prone areas seeing floods and districts otherwise very used to floods started experiencing droughts. Now, this is already the last year. We are not talking about some future period. So, all of this means when we started this whole dialogue on climate change, the entire thinking was on how do we mitigate. Some efforts have happened. And now it appears that mitigation, while we can all be hopeful and optimistic, we should be even more concerned about adaptation and building resilience and not be over optimistic about mitigation. At least if you are able to minimize the further distress going forward, we can be happy about. Now, with that kind of a background and alarming situation and nothing sort of a crisis, may I turn to Mr. Surya Kumar and ask him, from his vantage point, what kind of efforts are happening either for adaptation or for mitigation with focus on agriculture? Because agriculture can contribute to mitigation too. That angle is still there. And then, of course, resilience is even more important from an adaptation perspective. What is happening? So give us a broad overview and probably also conclude that with his own say on whether that's enough now that we know about the crisis and all of this action is happening. Is that enough, or do we need to do a lot more? And then we'll get into further conversation other in terms of what and how.
Thank you, Shiv Kumar, and thank you, Access, for getting this very important conversation before all of us. Whenever we talk about our livelihoods, we can't we can't forget the climate, and we can't forget the changes which are happening in the climate. I think livelihoods and climate are extremely interconnected. I think one important point which all of us know, almost 55% of the people directly are involved in agriculture. If you involve people indirectly involved in agriculture like ITC and add all the people, the amount of people involved in agriculture sector directly or indirectly is very huge. And whenever something happens to the climate, obviously all involved in this sector will be affected. What are we really doing about this particular thing? As Shiv Kumar said, I think climate change is a very new word which came into the official discourses. What do we do? What do we do as NABARD as far as this climate change is concerned? There are three things. Like we are the national implementing entity for three funds, like the Green Climate Fund, the Adaptation Fund Board money, and the National Fund for Climate Change. When you really put the money which is available, which came into the country under these heads, it is a small amount of money actually, around 1900 crores for 40 projects. When you put all these things together in this nomenclature of climate change funds, are the projects doing well? Obviously, the projects are doing well. And is that sufficient for a country of this size? The answer is no. Then the immediate question comes, do you think you will wait for someone to give money to get this climate change projects, either for adaptation or mitigation? Do you wait for that so-called bonanza? Whenever the COP happens, there is one discussion which happens, the developed countries should pay the developing countries. I am not taking a stand this way or that way. There is a strong feeling that so much money should come in, which doesn't come. So does that mean that the effort for adaptation and mitigation should stop? No. The most important thing which I personally believe is every country, and India specifically, invest a huge amount of money on creating several types of infrastructure. Why should we not use the nomenclature globally available and repurpose whatever we do, which is climate friendly, and we talk about it? So then immediately one question comes, oh, we don't have a nomenclature the way the European countries have, or the American continent has. Like say, for example, I was told by an agency in Europe that they have an ability to understand, uh, the monitoring agency has an ability to understand how the number of bank loans given to such projects, and how vulnerable they are to the climate change, and what could happen if something goes wrong. How can the balance sheets be looked at? We don't have that nomenclature at this point in time, but at the same time we can really repurpose whatever we are doing in this particular way. That is the only way we should really go ahead. And having said that, this is one way. Means it has to be a collective effort, and every agency which is involved in it should work towards developing one set of standard which is implementable, which is really doable by all people. So there is one word which is being very commonly used called greenwashing. I think all of us understand. I will tell you a small instance which happened to me personally. I was asked to attend an event which is happening in one place in Europe. So, as a prelude to that event, there was a meeting which was happening in Delhi, as to what should happen, what should the Indian contingent do when they go to that meeting. So, I came to that event in Vasant Vihar in Delhi, in one particular place. So all of them asked me, "Hey, why did you come?" I said, I thought this could be an interesting event, and my organization thought I should go. They said, this happened 4 years back, 5 years back, I think. They said, no, no, all of us are reporters. We write reports how good the work we do, our companies do, are green. You are anyway doing all the work in green as NABARD, so there is no need for you to come and report. So then I said, is climate simply only reporting or doing something on the ground? So then they said, I think it makes no sense that you come to the event, because all of us are reporters. All reporters are only coming there. So finally I decided not to go to that event, much to the discomfort of my colleagues in our office. Hey, why are you not going to that event? I said, I don't want to go to an event where people know how to write that the work which they're doing is green. One more thing which I want to tell is, as NABARD, over a period of time, we have invested 5,100 crores on such projects which have touched almost 18 million people in the country, which are green. Like basically, we invested a huge amount of money in soil conservation, water conservation work, and the work which improves livelihoods for the tribal communities. So all these projects, by definition, are green. But as I said, this so-called nomenclature which we use, now we're trying to, having invested a huge amount of money, so we're trying to see how much are the carbon sequestered by these projects. So 5,100 crores over 15 years period, and 18 million people whom we have touched is a big amount of money, big amount of size, and the number of people which we are touched. The whole idea is, can we productize it and ensure every act which happens in the country gets into this nomenclature, so that we will be in a position to present so many things which happen in the country. It could be anything and everything. How do we repurpose every act from the prism of climate? Because it is very, very real. Very, very real. I think that is the way we should really look at, because everyone understands climate change is happening. everyone understands it is impinging. If you really look at the data, it says by 2030 or so, some 10-12% drop will be there in rice and wheat. Primarily, we consume that. What will happen if India goes to an external market to say that I want to buy? There is no one to buy. There's no one to sell us. I think we should become a little more aware. This is what we believe. This is what we keep talking from my organization, NABAD.
Thank you. Let me pick up two elements out of what you just said. One is in terms of, are we doing the things which really reduce our vulnerability to the climate risk, as opposed to issues of nomenclature and reporting and all of that? And second is about financing, and I'll come to financing a little later. But out of 40 odd projects that you talked about where you're directly financing and you'll have some familiarity, if you could talk about a couple of them,
Okay.
which may have, which in your mind really are something which is in that right direction, that can give us some hope that when these things get scaled,
Yeah.
then the right challenge is going to get addressed, keeping issues of nomenclature and all of those kind of apart. So that will make a real difference, which will be those couple of projects.
Yeah. So like one such project which we had among the 40 projects, to give a couple of examples which can reduce the vulnerability. All of us, most of us in this room consume either rice or wheat. I think there is no second opinion to it. Maybe some people are consuming millets maybe once in a while. So at the same time, when you really go a little more granular, which variety of rice do you eat or which variety of wheat do you eat? I think if you really go down, there will be only 2-3 varieties of rice or wheat which people consume. So as opposed to that, there are many endemic land races which are present in few geographies. So because because there is a demand for a particular type of rice, because there is a demand for a particular type of wheat, there is a demand in the market, so people grow, so people consume them. we found there is a nice way to help preserve the local germplasm, which is so what we call adaptable, suitable to a particular geography. We have near Mandya, there is one young man, 35 years, not a well-to-do person. Is a farmer. He studied BA history in a college in Bangalore. He has with him 150 varieties of rice which are so local to that particular place. He says when the rain comes in this month, the Indian calendar, I would grow this rice. If the rain doesn't come, so I will grow this rice. And okay, it will not give me yield, but this is very resilient, and it can really support food security. And one individual, out of his money, manages so many of these crops, so many of these varieties. And when you go into his house is full of, it looks like a museum. They live there with his some sheep, some goat, some chicken, all these rice varieties. He says, I have a small plot of land. I can't grow all the varieties at the same point of time. I grow say 10 varieties now. I harvest them. So he also learned, because his grandfather was doing it, his father was doing it, he was doing it. So we supported that, and it was such a great thing. One more very interesting organization is there near Hyderabad in Medak called Deccan Development Society. Deccan Development Society. They do, I'm sure you might have heard about them. They do some phenomenal work. So they work with 5,000 women. It is not one of the project which we funded. Like I used that for my master's dissertation when I was doing a master's in sustainable development in UK. Uh, they have they have preserved around 80 land races of pulses, millets, food grains, you name it, they have it. But they also know when to grow what. So this is something which we really need to look at. I think if you go to Bangalore, there are different types of millets available. Something called as a brown top millet sells almost at 200, 300 rupees a kilo. There is a demand for it. People have become aware. I think recently, like some of the data says, Bain and Company did some work. 60% of the Indians are prepared to pay extra money to buy any product which is nature friendly. So that is like one more example to share, which looks at the improves the resilience. It looks very simple. A chain of and we have done this with GCF funding in Orissa. A chain of farm ponds, 10,000 farm ponds, 1,000 solar, what you call, pump sets, and crops which are resilient to that particular land, varieties which are resilient to that particular place in Orissa, which have improved the ecology to such level and improved their livelihoods. And one more interesting thing we found, which we did along with MS Swaminathan Foundation, funded by the Adaptation Fund Board, uh, we simply ensured the mangrove forests come back to life. Simply, mangrove forests come back to life. It has completely changed the whole ecosystem. The fish increased, the fish catch increased, the fishermen became much better off. So I think some of you, like I'm sure some of you might have heard, the fishermen who are in a place called north part of Andhra Pradesh called Srikakulam 2-3 years back, because there was no fish catch, they were coming down to some other places because there was no fish, like because the local habitat got what you call disturbed. This little money which this little project which we did has completely changed the way the ecosystem is working. The simple point is like when a project can create such sort of intense development, why can't every project which government funds pick up the threads from that, pick up the best practices from that, and incorporate? This is the whole game which uh, we keep talking to the governments with whom we react on a constant basis at the state levels. So these are the few examples which I want to share.
Yeah, I think brilliant examples. As part of Green Revolution and otherwise, we selected and optimized for more intensive inputs and improving productivity. I mean, obviously, food self-sufficiency was the challenge that we were to deal with as a singular vector. And as a process, we lost the resilience as a trait. And unless we bring much of this germplasm together and protect them and make use of them appropriately, and be it in rice, wheat, or other more popular kind of grains, or millets that you alluded to and which came up in the morning session also, that given that millets were not part of Green Revolution, helped retain their resilience. Millets can be grown under different conditions, whether it is less than 500 mm or more than 1500 mm of rainfall, or a low altitude or high altitude, any kind of soil, whether it's sandy, loamy, clay, whatever kind of soils, or temperatures below 10 or above 40. I think the versatility in which millets can continue to get produced, as opposed to what was singular focus productivity under intense agriculture, and therefore that vulnerability we just saw wheat last year. Almost a standing crop with one last big heat wave. We lost more than 10% of the crop, and some other part of the crop suffered in terms of its quality. So, being smart with respect to variety of breed, in case of animals and so on, is a rather top of the stack element in the climate smart agriculture, and therefore that is very valid. With respect to your second aspect of mangroves, it's another challenge in climate as it is in some other related spheres, is that the conflict between I do something today, the benefit will happen tomorrow, or I take some action, the benefit will go to my neighbor. And this kind of challenge, part of it being the tragedy of commons, a part of it is being in terms of the time dimension variation, and therefore the action gets limited. And in case of supporting and promoting mangrove, what was the economic kind of equation that went right, because of which the protection sustained, that we can draw lessons from?
I'll first look at the mangrove things, then I'll go to the first one which you asked. I worked in 9 states in so many years in NABARD, and 36 years in NABARD. One common problem which we all like, development projects have always interested me, and then I would always end up going and doing such projects like that. One issue which keeps bothering any development work is, how do you convince a person to do this, and who are you to do this? I think this is one dimension which constantly comes. How do you convince a person, a set of people, that something went wrong in your ecosystem? I am telling you, you do this. Sometimes it borders an arrogance of a person who is giving money. How do you convince the people to see big picture is always been a big problem. We also noticed one interesting thing. I will tell you one small incident before I come to this mangrove story. In one place in Maharashtra, we funded a project in 1,500 hectares. It is a 5-year soil and water conservation work. 4 years work has already happened. That means we got several check dams ready, several tree plantations were ready. The village was growing much better onion. And suddenly we discovered all what was done in the project. That means we would have invested around 90 lakh rupees in that particular village. We discovered everything was raised. So someone said all which were done in the last 4 years are raised. So we said, this is very strange, why this should happen? Then 4 of us went. They said that you are not allowed to come and stay in the village. So we stayed in some place 2 hours from that particular village. So every morning we were coming to that village and saying that you please tell what has happened. So 4 days we literally talked to everyone in that village. Everyone. So in the final day, on the 4th evening, around 4-5 o'clock, when we were asked to go, one old lady told me, what do you think you are? I said, no, we don't think anything about us. We simply said, we wanted you to look at a big picture. You have seen it. And you have seen the benefits. But you don't understand what it has caused to the village. My Shaukar who is the village headman, village everything, he's become powerless. Everyone became so powerful. Everyone became equal. We don't want this. I said, if everyone becomes equal, it will be good. So they said, no, we don't want, we want the status quo to continue. The simple story here is, when you go, the two things come into the picture. Do they see the big picture? And does it really change the hierarchy in that particular place? I think for me, the seeing the big picture part is the most difficult thing. Hierarchy disturbing any development work always disturbs the hierarchy. And as a development professional, I think I would look at it like this: any work done by a development organization should stand as an exemplar, and we should be smart enough look at all these things. But convincing people was a big thing. Coming back to the what you call mangrove example, we just told all the fish have gone, so mangroves have gone. So you are doing something else. You are all expert fishermen. So why can't you really see? No, no. Will the mangroves come up? The nature destroyed us. The nature destroyed them. We said, okay, nature destroyed them because you were doing something. Let us try to build it. Means it took a while for convincing people to look at that particular big picture, and it really worked. But at the same time, strangely, when this project worked in a particular village, does the other village really pick up? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So how much it really cost? Means while there was a cost of an organization handling it, the cost really involved our plantation of the mangroves and ensuring they don't die. It can be done by a collective effort, but do people see this? People don't all the time don't see that. So I think when a project is done, a part of the project should also be looking at how do we really do the exemplification, or making it into a learning experience to others nearby. I think that is one thing which should be really looked at. So we try our best in our projects to really do that. Coming to the first part of resilience you're talking about, I think when you're talking about a particular variety, and I think this is my personal view. I'm not a historian. I studied agriculture, certainly. When we got into the Green Revolution, obviously we got into the Green Revolution. I think we should also remember we got into the Green Revolution somewhere in 1960s. We got into the Green Revolution because whatever we were doing as a country got completely changed by the Britishers, who made sustainable subsistence agriculture to market-led agriculture. I think indigo plantation and Mahatma Gandhiji's what you call Satyagraha in indigo plantation in East Champaran was an exemplification of that particular act. So suddenly when you started moving from X to Y to the market, things got distorted. I think I also add the Bengal famine, which killed almost 4 million people out of 60 million people in the country, is a scar on Indian psyche. I think any person who is in the public policy, any person who is in the development, and would really remember that. I think what has happened to the country. So when we went to when we got money from PL 480, I think it is there's a lot of things we can read. I don't know how to say that. It is always a very humbling thing for any country to go and say, you give me money. I think so we can't say, no, there's a word in Sanskrit, bhavati bhikshan dehi. You can't ask bhiksha. I think to ask bhiksha to someone, you have to really bow down and do it. I think when people who want to become monks will do that first, because they want to cut the ego down to that level when you look from a philosophical angle. So when this has happened, so obviously we need to really excel, and we chose those best performing varieties which suit. But what worked in rice and wheat in few geographies, we try to copy that. It doesn't really work. That is the reason why we see excellence of growth. Recently, someone told me, I don't have any data to say. In few non-conventional green revolution belts, wherever there is productivity increasing beyond a point of time, beyond a point, and touching 3.5 million, 3.5 tons a hectare, the incidence of cancer is growing. Means I said, this is someone who has done groundwork told me. This is not verified by any what you call data. I don't know how far it is true, but all of us intuitively understand when you use so much of chemicals beyond what a system can take, it reflects like. So, having achieved whatever we achieved as a country, we're a proud nation of with food security. We export agricultural products. So it is time we really look at, take a pause, say whatever we have not done. Look at millets, look at climate resilience. I think we need to shift our thinking because we are strong enough as a country to really change. This is my very personal opinion, and I'm very sure the data certainly supports me. We have all the ability to do this, and this is the way forward. So for example, someone says, oh, someone says natural farming is not good at all. So there are several, and one more problem is there is a clutter of names around. So I would always, I think there is one great person used to live in near Bangalore airport called L. Narayan Reddy. I think if someone of you know, like I know him so well, and I had been to his farm couple of times. I think for those of you who haven't heard about him, he has a 4-acre farm. There are 1522 or 1523 types of plants and trees exist on that 4-acre farm, which are interconnected to each other. So I think time has come for the science to really look at how those models work. I think one more interesting dimension, which I studied agriculture in Pusa Institute in Delhi. I think the agriculture which we have learned prime in the country, the research which we have learned in the country, came from two places: Rothamsted Agricultural Research Station in the UK and the land grant colleges in the US. So certainly we have learned from them. Certainly we have learned the methods. I think we have become strong enough to look at how my Indian systems are working. We need to decode them. We need to multiply them because country has all the strength to do. This is where we should uh, we should pause, reflect, and act. This will solve many problems. Hopefully.
So good. Let me. So there are two elements that you. One is about the exemplars. How do we decode and what we get out of it? And the second thing that you also mentioned while talking about mangrove is on action learning and the importance of large-scale action learning to, among other things, build resilience, which is the topic of our conversation. And I'll illustrate something that we are doing, and through that, link it with the very first point you talked about on funding. You know, ITC has this program called Climate Smart Villages in partnership with one of the CJR institutions. And in the states of Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra, the first pilot was taken in 1,500 villages. And it was built as a large-scale action learning project. Now we are in 6th year. So of these 1,500 villages, primarily it was broken down into 2x2 matrix on high and low on productivity and high and low on resilience in 7 crops which are more prominent in those 1,500 villages. And those which are falling in the high productivity and high resilience obviously are the exemplar villages from which all the other quadrants can learn. And at the beginning of the project in 2016, about 17% of all villages fell into that top right quadrant, high productivity and high resilience. And by creating action learning groups from amongst the farmers and exposure visits and conversations and facilitated action, they listed out as many as 37 different practices over 2 years that library got built. And in fifth year, last year, sixth is now, so fifth year last year, we saw that 74% of all villages moved into high productivity, high resilience, simply out of learning from within, and including whether it is the right variety and right breed of animals, or whether it is how carbon related work is being done, and more importantly, the importance of community based institutions. Because when you said existing hierarchy gets broken, if a new class has to take shape, it has to possibly be through some kind of institutions, and it's difficult for individuals to adjust to a new dispensation. And of course, linkages to the market and so on. But the point that I want to pull out of that is that all of this costed not more than 20 crores of rupees. And of course, now as we integrate with the states, using this example to integrate into their own adaptation plans, we will see that getting scaled in partnership with the states. But much larger numbers that you spoke about, which you also said are small given the complexity and challenge of climate change, should we be focusing a lot more on, out of the 40 projects that you're doing and similar other work being done by others, right action learning, and possibly with much smaller outlays, achieve much better outcomes, or run after larger sums of money and top-down driven kind of projects where that money goes in?
I would choose the second option, but these I look at it like this: when we do a project as NABARD, I'm very clear. I tell the same thing to my colleagues. I am not competing with a state government. I am doing a project. We should try to make that project exemplar. It should be a best practice. When someone like Shivkumar and ITC does a project, they do a project which connects to their line of work, and again which feeds into their what you call line of work. They also cannot obviously run several projects. But as he very rightly said, the amount of money required to do that climate smart village, the amount of money required to do that regeneration of the mangrove forest in that particular place is not very high. But the whole problem is, how do we take the best practices and super implant them on the existing programs? This is always a big challenge. Because corporates or civil society organizations or some World Bank, IFAD funded projects cannot be big. They will remain X number. How do we really create a discourse from this which permeates and gets imbued to all the governmental programs is a major challenge. I think this is one thing which I constantly battle all these years where I worked. I will give you an example which illustrates this dimension. In one meeting in one particular state, there was a discussion that doubling of the farmers' income is the responsibility of the banks. Okay, so I heard this discussion couple of times. Means the meeting happens once in 2 months, whatever. I heard this once, again, second time. Then obviously very senior people were there in the meeting. I said, how come doubling of farmer income is the responsibility of the banks? Doubling of farmer income happens. First, we should understand how the doubling of farmer, because the Honorable Prime Minister said, somehow it got into this thing and saying that banks should do it. I'm not saying banks should not do it, but I said primarily who is the prime mover, who is the secondary supporter. Then I said, this will happen only when your government tells me what all are the innovative technologies which are low cost, which can come together. And doubling a farmer income in one village, one district, and doubling a farmer income in some other district are two different things, because in whatever goes into the components are different. Then I said, you tell me in that case what all are the ideas, technologies you have from all the departments you have, so that we will put them together. So because I really pushed it, so okay, you be the convener of that meeting. I said, okay, I'll be the convener of the meeting. Then we started convening. After 2 rounds, no one wanted to come. So here the point is how this particular thing, like since we're talking about climate change, and since now everyone thinks it is inevitable, and I think some element of strong discourse which picks up the best practices from whatever work corporates have done, whatever work civil society has done, it should go into a slightly higher orbit, and which should get imbued on all the programs. I think that is a big challenge, but that is how it has to be done. The word convergence, which is often used in the development discourse, is a very romantic idea. Convergence doesn't easily happen because everyone protects their own fiefdoms, however small that fiefdom is. So, convergence can happen when a bright man or woman is there pushing that. I think it becomes individualized. So, but a time has come where individuals become secondary. The primary reason what is going to, if the yield of wheat and rice come down by 10% 2 years, it's going to be a serious thing for the country. I think some element of best practices need to be pulled up, and we need to have a system in the country to make them a part of the every program, every development program which is done at a large scale.
Right. While your comments have triggered some more questions in my mind, but let's pick up a couple of questions from the participants also.
Yeah. Mike is here. Mike is here. Yeah, Mike is here. So there is a. Yeah. We're running out of time.
Sir, actually, this is not really a question, but because I thought we have been working with NABARD extensively. We also have been working with ITC extensively. I am Dr. Rajeshri from BIAF, and BIAF has also implemented one very good program on with Adaptation Fund and NABARD support in Himalaya, Champawat. So I just wanted to say, because there was this discussion on economic aspect of it, adaptation, I feel when we are working with the ground communities, what we have realized is sustaining income itself is a problem. Loss of or crop, or also the negative or deficit, those type of things. So I think what is important is sustaining the income rather than increasing income. Of course, we have identified various pathways for linking to market and making it self revenue based and long term sustainable. However, I think what is required is there are some other mechanisms like, food security, dietary diversity. Also on commons, there is a carbon stock, biodiversity index that is there, payment for ecosystem services. So these are also the kind of parameters. While doing adaptation, we should think of all of these. And also long term resource of fodder, long term resource of water, and these are what working as far as adaptation is concerned, is our experience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Yeah.
Thank you for that wonderful discussion. I'm on the board of Munich Climate Insurance Initiative. And I really want to ask you, this is what you said about developed and developing countries is very true. We try to get as much funds from developing countries, but as you know, India has enough funds of its own. And in the agri sector, the impact of climate change and the need for climate related insurance is very high. We do have some of the best developed models in our country, whether it's weather-based insurance or yield-based insurance. And now people are also trying in other countries. I don't know if we do in India, just a pre-decided claim amount the moment a flood strikes or something, and roll it out very fast. So I was wondering how NABARD is engaging with new climate-related insurance for farmers. Thank you.
We very honestly, we don't have a direct we are not directly working with any insurance related things. We have a small stake in the Agricultural Insurance Corporation of the country. We work with them, so we are an equity holder in that. So we don't have a very strong presence or working in this particular place, in this particular area. Should not we work? Yes, I think this is required to be looked at very honestly and seriously. Somehow insurance is always, crop insurance is always looked from several filters, and everyone has a name and a feel and a description of it. It's a little complicated area to work. Somehow, so far, I think business as usual is what is going on so far, because the climate change really didn't pinch us enough, which is going to pinch. Morning when I was just coming, like the TV was on, I think the BBC World Service was on. It says that, I didn't hear it completely. In Greenland, the glaciers are melting. That's what that report was saying, I think today morning at 7:30. So it is really not pinched us enough, I think, but the time has come where we need to really look at. We have no direct understanding, experience as an organization. No, we need to really understand that.
Can I make a point? Yes.
Yes, please.
This is a question to Shiv. As we know that the climate change is kind of inevitable and there's going to be a productivity loss. I don't know what percentage is that going to be. And if that is a kind of a concern for all of us, I just like to know from Shiv that in his company, what is the kind of boardroom discussion going on in next 10 years? If there's a productivity loss of 10% for wheat or soybean or anything of that sort, how are you going to face that challenge? Will you be growing, or there will be some kind of a problem for you as well?
Yeah, what we are doing is getting a lot more specific on this broader climate change related discussion to the specific value chains of interest to us. So we, in the first instance, picked up 12 of those value chains, which are more important among more than 20 that we work in. So for all of that, we completed 3 of them, and others are underway in terms of mapping climate hotspots around India, as well as all the competing origins in a global market, as to where the projections are taking place, going on all the way up to 2070 for the time being, and what are the shifts that are taking place. And at all the key phenological stages of the crop, 5, 6, whatever stage in a crop cycle, in all the growing regions, what are the shifts that are likely to take place based on all the projections that are done by different experts, and that's where AI is quite heavily used to pick up what is most representative. And therefore, what are likely to be the bigger problems? So far, we seem to be relatively cracking the challenge of heat, drought resilience. Those issues are not so much of a challenge. We have a pipeline of germplasm that can be brought in. But the problem which we still need to focus and solve is on waterlogging and heavy rains in a short period of time. For that, not enough solutions are built. So some work is likely to happen in that area. And where some shifts of geographies probably will need to take place. Based on these projections of what the climate is likely to be, which regions are more vulnerable, and therefore which crops can probably be grown there, and these crops, where can they shift? Which is also leading to some kind of an opportunity at a global level. When we are looking at what are the competing origins, we are seeing the similar impact elsewhere in those regions. And therefore, where India is likely to get an edge from an export competitiveness perspective, if we play our game right in terms of taking all these steps that we discussed in different pieces, in terms of how do you build those resilience, how do you get that mitigation in place. So therefore, in terms of action, what's discussed in the boardroom and on the ground is really getting far more specific in building that resilience and looking at also opportunities in a global market situation.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Varun Kashyap. I'm from Let's Endorse. We are a social enterprise. So thank you for this discussion today and this opportunity. I mean, more than 15 years back when I was in college, I read about Ichapal, and that was, one of the inspiring and intriguing initiatives by ITC. Obviously, the world has moved on. 15 years, right? My question is something that has intrigued me a lot is, how do companies, like ITC, balance between shareholders' interests and increasing the income of, for example, the farmers or rural folks that you engage with? My specific point is that, when if we go by the minimum support price, for example, or what the government expects us to pay for the produce, I don't think that is going to kind of help in increasing the income or like doubling the income. So how do you kind of look at that, and how do you work with the farmers or other rural livelihood initiatives where you bring people up the value chain, and and then how does that impact your own value chains, for example, at ITC? So that is something that I would like to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, the inherent part of your question is that how do you look for those win more models that both parties, in this case, farmers and the corporates, and obviously at the other end are also consumers, from where all the value chains get anchored, also has to win more. So typically the routes are a few, whether along the whole chain, if there is aggregate cost of connecting a consumer to the producer is X, where are the inefficiency that you can reduce and therefore redistribute the savings in a fairer manner, is one route to do it. Our consumer is looking for a higher value, and therefore how do you get the producer to align with that and produce and get the production system being more demand responsive, and therefore a higher value participation that can happen there. Our link up with some of the conversation that we just been having, which is the demand which is also coming today, where the attributes are not just the product linked attributes, but also on the value chain linked attributes, by saying that, is this grown with a net zero commitment? Is this grown with, let's say, 30% water reduction or not? So as the customers are seeking some of that, making the participants from the producer side and enabling them to deliver that, is how the value chains are also prospering, with all the participants winning more. So I think there are multiple routes in which that is happening, and today we see a lot more opportunity with further advancements in digital technologies. As we moved from eChowpal into the current phase where we have branded the super app as ITC Mars, Mars standing for Meta Market for Advanced Agriculture and Rural Services. Ability to link up many other agri-tech startups which are developing interesting solutions and in a farmer-centric manner get them delivered to build all these three types, whether it is a cost reduction or whether it is better value for the consumer or the environment value embedded into it, any which way. I think that opportunity is showing up. And in order to multiply and do it on scale, the other route is integrating FPOs so that you really are able to democratize that a lot more with multiple number of farmers participating through that kind of institution is the other route. So number of routes are possible, and that's the optimism that we have. And so we are there on the dot at 1 o'clock. So I'll take that as the last question.
No, I will
Give the
add a little
last
dimension.
word to Mr. Surya Kumar, and after that we wrap up.
No, I'm not. This is not a last word. I'm just adding to what he said and answering a part of the question which you are not asked. I think when a farmer can give, like a company can win or earn only when the farmer wins or earns more. So, for example, look at a situation where ITC or similar companies like ITC are working with the farmers, where there is a symbiotic relationship between the farmer and the company like ITC, which is buying that particular produce. Let us forget for a while. Let us forget for a while that ITC is not there, who is in this business. IT is in a different business. You look at the cost of cultivation of a particular crop anywhere in the country. Look at what has been the cost, and look at what has been the price which the farmers have been getting. I think the costs of cultivation have gone up manyfold as compared to the price which he is getting. When a company like ITC comes which is working closely, then the whole thing becomes better because there is a relationship between both the people, both the parties. But so far in the country, there are companies were buying from a mandi, and mandi was being ruled by someone else. From there, when it moves into more democratization, things change. I think that transformation is slowly happening through eChowpal, through companies like ITC. That is a win-win situation. I think we are slowly progressing there, but we require more organizations which directly work with the farmers. And when the FPO story, I think if you really look at FPO story is still at its infancy. I would say it is 10 odd years in the country. I would still call it a 10-year-old baby is still a baby only, not a grown-up man or a woman. But there is a huge amount of potential in this idea where democratization is possible, and most of the FPOs at this point in time are only buying inputs together. They're still not selling output together. So when that really happens, that power to the FPO, that democratization happens. I think that is the way we should really look forward and go. I think that is the way the direction is gradually moving to the direction. That's a very nice thing which is happening in the country.
Thank you. So we'll take those closing comments and for enriching this discussion, very thought-provoking comments as well as all your participation with very interesting questions. Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.
I thank our guests, Mr. Surya Kumar and Mr. Shiv Kumar, for this insightful discussion and talking about the urgency for creating a knowledge base, learning from within, looking at best practices, and ultimately making an action-based, customized solution to build resilience against climate change.